She introduced me at work as her driver while holding hands with her boss at the company gala. Do you know what it feels like to walk into a room thinking you're there to support the woman you love, only to realize you've been cast as the punchline in her performance? That's exactly how it felt that night. I wasn't even supposed to go. She'd insisted it was just a work thing, a black tie event for her company. Not the kind of place I'd enjoy, but then she changed her tune at the last minute. Told me I should come after all, that it would look good for her to have me there. I thought maybe she was finally proud of me, proud of us. I ironed my best suit, polished my shoes, even picked up a bottle of cologne I hadn't worn in years. When we walked in, the chandeliers glowed. The band played softly. The room buzzed with laughter and champagne flutes clinking. She looked stunning in a dress that made heads turn. And for a moment, I felt lucky. Lucky to be the man on her arm. Lucky to have someone so radiant choose me. But then she let go of my hand. Her boss approached, tall, confident, the kind of man whose presence filled a room before he even opened his mouth. And without missing a beat, she slipped her hand into his. Smiling, radiant, she said, "This is my driver," and she pointed at me. Driver. The word hit me like a slap. There was laughter, polite, confused, muffled. I forced a smile, my jaw aching, my palms sweating. But inside I was unraveling. Her boss didn't even blink. He just nodded, still holding her hand, and said, "Good to meet you," as if I were nothing more than the hired help. I stood there trying to process, trying to breathe, trying not to let the shock on my face betray me. She didn't even glance my way, didn't offer me an explanation. She moved on, introducing him to others, their fingers still entwined, leaving me standing like a ghost in the corner. The night blurred after that. I remember the laughter, the speeches, the way she leaned into him, whispered in his ear, laughed at his joke. I remember colleagues looking at me with pity, others with curiosity, as if they were all in on some secret I had just discovered. I remember staring down at my champagne glass, the bubbles rising and popping, wondering how long she had been planning, how long had I been relegated from partner to prop. I didn't make a scene. I didn't pull her aside and demand answers, because the humiliation was already complete. She had introduced me to her world not as her husband, not even as her friend, but as her driver, disposable, replaceable, invisible. When we got home that night, she didn't mention it. She kicked off her heels, poured herself a glass of wine, and scrolled through her phone like nothing had happened. I stood in the doorway, staring at her, waiting for her to explain. She never did. And when I finally asked, voice trembling, "Why did you say that?" she shrugged. "Don't make a big deal out of it. It was a joke. A joke." That's when I realized it wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was deliberate. But betrayal, I've learned, doesn't announce itself all at once. It shows you glimpses, pieces of a puzzle you don't want to finish. That night was just the biggest piece, the one that forced me to see the picture clearly. But the pieces had been there all along. The late nights at the office, the perfume lingering when she came home, the way she guarded her phone like it was a lifeline, the sudden trips, the expensive dresses she said were just on sale. I'd ignored them, convinced myself she was ambitious, that her career demanded sacrifices. I thought I was being supportive. I thought I was giving her space. But space, it turns out, was exactly what she needed to let someone else in. Over the next weeks, I watched more closely, not out of paranoia, but out of survival. I noticed how often she mentioned him, casually dropping his name into conversation. I noticed the way she lit up when she got a text, how quickly she turned the screen away when I entered the room. And I noticed most of all, how absent she became even when she was right there beside me. I wanted to confront her. I wanted to scream, to demand the truth. But something in me held back, because if she could stand in front of her entire company, her colleagues, her boss, and introduce me as her driver, then the truth was bigger than a confession. The truth wasn't just an affair, it was erasure. She wasn't hiding me, she was replacing me. And if that was her plan, then I needed a plan of my own. So I started digging, carefully, quietly. Receipts, emails, hotel bookings, spa charges, all under her name, often with his initials scrawled beside hers. At first the evidence felt like knives, cutting deeper every time I uncovered another piece. But over time, the knives turned into tools. Tools I could use. Because humiliation only destroys you if you let it stay in the dark. Bring it into the light, And it changes. It shifts. It becomes power. I wasn't sure yet how I would use that power, but I knew one thing. The next gala, the next toast, the next stage she thought she controlled, it wouldn't be her show anymore. It would be mine. I didn't sleep the night after the gala. I lay there staring at the ceiling while she breathed evenly beside me, her back turned, as though nothing had happened. My chest felt tight. My fingers still tingled from the way I had clutched that champagne glass all night, to keep from shaking. Her driver. The words rang in my head like a church bell at midnight. Loud, endless, impossible to ignore. I had thought humiliation would come with fire, with anger, with fists slamming on tables. Instead it was quiet, cold, heavy, the kind of weight that presses on your chest until you can't breathe. But by morning, something in me had shifted. The weight was still there, but under it something sharp had started to form. Resolve. The kind that doesn't flare and die but stays. She went about her day, as if nothing had happened. Poured coffee, scrolled on her phone, kissed my cheek lightly before heading to work. I watched her leave, the door shutting softly behind her, and I realized she didn't even care if I knew, because in her mind, she had already rewritten me out of the story. I wasn't her husband anymore. I wasn't even her partner. I was an accessory, a prop, a shadow she could dismiss with a single careless introduction. But I wasn't gone, and if she wanted to humiliate me in public, then she'd learn what happens when the man you erase decides not to stay. Erased. I started small, quietly gathering. She thought she was careful, but people like her never are. She left receipts in her purse, credit card statements in the mail, hotel charges, spa packages, dinners at places far above what she'd normally spend, always with a second name scribbled or entered beside hers. His, her boss. I copied everything, scanned the receipts, saved the statements, tucked them away into a neat little folder on my computer, backed up 3 times. Every time she laughed at her phone or came home smelling of cologne that wasn't mine, I added another piece to the file. It was like building a case in court, but the jury wouldn't be strangers. It would be the very people she thought admired her. The colleagues, the friends, the family. Meanwhile, I played my part. Silent, distant, but not suspiciously so. I let her believe I was defeated, that I had swallowed the humiliation whole, and would sit quietly in the corner while she flaunted him in the light. Silence is a powerful mask. It makes people careless, and she grew careless fast. 2 weeks later, she came home buzzing with excitement. There was another gala coming up, bigger than the last one. Awards, recognition, the kind of event that drew not just company employees, but investors, clients, media. She was nominated for something, a leadership award, she said. She was practically glowing as she explained how important the night would be, and I smiled, nodded, told her I'd be there, because of course I would be there. She thought the night would belong to her, but it would belong to me. In the days leading up to it, I printed copies of the receipts, highlighted the signatures, paired them with photos I had quietly collected. Her with him at hotels, walking arm in arm, his hand on her back, not grainy, not questionable, clear, undeniable. I put it all together in a neat slideshow, professional, crisp, exactly the kind of evidence no one could ignore. When the night came, I dressed carefully, not the suit she would have chosen for me, but one that made me look sharp, in control, untouchable. I arrived at the gala with her on my arm, just like before, but this time I didn't feel pride. I felt anticipation. The evening unfolded like the last one. Laughter, glasses clinking, speeches. She basked in it, radiant under the lights, holding his hand when she thought no one was looking. My stomach twisted, but I held steady, because I knew what was coming. Then came her moment. She was called up on stage to accept her award. She glowed, thanked her team, her boss, her support system. She raised her glass, ready to toast, ready to play her role again. That was my cue. I stood from my table, calm, deliberate, and walked toward the stage. Murmurs rippled through the room. She glanced at me, startled, but kept smiling, expecting me to play the dutiful husband. Instead, I stepped up to the microphone. Before we toast, I said, my voice steady, carrying through the hall, I think it's only fair to show everyone here what true teamwork looks like. I clicked the remote in my pocket. The screen behind her flickered, and then it began. First slide, the Ocean Crest hotel bill, her name and his name signed together. Gasps, whispers. Second slide, Serenity Spa charges, both names again, highlighted for clarity. The room buzzed, people shifting, heads turning. Third slide, a photo of them walking into a hotel, his arm around her waist, both smiling like they owned the world. The hall erupted. People gasped, whispered furiously. Some even stood, her face drained of color, the award in her hand trembling. He stiffened in his seat, jaw tight, his career flashing before his eyes. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't rage. I simply looked at her and said into the microphone, "This is my wife, and this is her boss." I was introduced as her driver. I think now you understand why. The silence that followed was heavier than any applause. I left the stage without another word, without looking back. The chaos exploded behind me. People shouting, her trying to speak, him arguing with colleagues, investors murmuring in disgust. I walked out into the cool night air, the city lights blurring around me, my chest finally lighter than it had been in months. The fallout was immediate. Within days the story spread. Colleagues talked. Investors pulled back. His spotless reputation was shattered. Her award was rescinded. The company scrambled to distance itself from both of them. They had tried to use me as a prop, a punchline, but in the end they had scripted their own destruction. And me, I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I simply moved on, because revenge isn't about getting even. It's about reclaiming your place in the story. And I had done that. Weeks later she tried to call, left voicemails, emails, letters. She said she'd made a mistake, that she never meant to hurt me, that she still loved me, but love doesn't humiliate you in front of hundreds of people. Love doesn't erase you. I never replied. And him, he vanished from the company quietly. Rumor had it his marriage collapsed too. He was seen in bars, alone, trying to charm women who saw him for what he really was. People often ask me now if I regret it, standing up in front of that entire gala exposing them like that, and my answer is always the same. Regret is for people who had a choice. I didn't choose betrayal, but I did choose the ending. She thought calling me her driver was the final insult, but in reality, it was just the opening line to a story she never finished writing. Because the ending, that was mine, and I wrote it in front of everyone.